This is Steve Ridgel, and I want to tell you another story of how God works in amazing ways. So, several months ago, I was up in Wichita, Kansas, and did a lot of work helping people learn to talk about Jesus and talking to people about Jesus. And while there, I got to be good friends with an elder up there, and his wife had a nephew down here in Abilene where I live, and he got sick with cancer, and they let us know, and I went to the hospital, met his parents, met much of his family. He eventually ended up in ICU and then hospice, and spent a lot of time with him, and he eventually succumbed to cancer, and I did his funeral. But I remember some of the faith discussions we had and that they had toward the end, and so I got to know the family. That's one part of this story. Now, another family I'm good friends with, we went to church together a number of years, and then COVID hit, and it kind of lost track a little bit, but reconnected and visited some, and she's going through some heart issues. And I got to communicate with her husband and told him we were praying for him, and eventually he said she's having a procedure today, in fact, that I'm recording this. She's having a procedure, a heart cath, and they're probably going to do a pacemaker, and he asked if I would come up because she was anxious. So I went to the hospital. He came out because right now where I am, we're only letting one visitor in a room at a time. And I got to go in and talk to her, and it was really a great Christian perspective. She said, I'm not worried about the end result, but I'm a little worried about the process. She's a little claustrophobic and all the stuff you go through. So we prayed and talked and quoted scripture and prayed together, and went down and was telling her husband about the visit, and I prayed with him. And it was a good experience. And a gentleman came around the corner. Now, the first family whose nephew I had done the funeral for, their last name I happened to remember, and I'd just seen on Facebook from the young man's parents that there was a brother, his young man I did the funeral for, his dad's brother, was in the hospital with COVID. So an older gentleman came around and asked me if I worked at the hospital. I told him I didn't, but said I'd be glad to help you. And he asked some questions about how you could visit, and I didn't know all the answers. But I saw his name, and I said, I have a strange question. Is your son in here with COVID? And he said, yes. How do you know? And I pulled my mask down and said, I did your grandson's funeral. And he told me all the family was out there, and they've been having a family meeting and hoping his son was turning a corner. But we went out. In fact, the gentleman I was with that I'd been to see his wife about the heart procedure, the three of us prayed together, and he got the older gentleman, the granddad, got to meet my friend, and he took me out to see the rest of the family. And immediately the grandmother jumped up and said, I remember you coming to hospice and sitting with me and my grandson. And I said, yes, I did, and I remember you. And all the family was there, and when I pulled my mask down, I even told them I'd try to look preachery so they'd recognize me in the funeral. And they laughed, and that family got together up, and we got to pray for their father, son, uncle to be healed from COVID. Got to invite them to come to church over at Hillcrest, where Marcia and I go, and said, come over there. It's good people. Love to have you come to church with us sometime. They really appreciated it. Thanked me so much for praying with them, or remember when I did the funeral for their family member, and just it was an interesting thing. And I thought how God really works in amazing ways. See, the point of this story isn't so much what happens to those two families. I want you to hear that God orchestrates little moments for us to intersect with people all the time. I went to see one person, happened to recognize the other person, made the connection, and got to do ministry for a number of people that way. If you're a believer, I'm telling you, God will use you if you just make yourself open. Just ask God, say, in what ways can you help? Can I help people today? Put me in people's lives and let me know. And God will do that. And if you're not a Christian, that's the God we serve, the God that helps us watch out for each other. So this is Steve Ridgel saying, you go, God. Thank you.